Hello everyone and welcome to this video. If you're new here, welcome. So today I want to talk a little bit about our inner child and about how that inner child can literally run your life if you're not aware of it, if you're not cognizant of what's going on. So inner child is something that we all have, and it's a part of ourselves that comes from our early childhood usually. And what is happening is, if we are not healed, if we have not healed our inner child, if we have not spent some time and done some inner work around healing that inner child, it ends up literally running our life. Everything in nature tries to heal itself. So whenever we have that trauma, early trauma, what happens is we tend to attract the same things in our grown-up life in order to heal that initial trauma. So I'm going to give you an example. Like, let's say if you felt abandoned as a child. So I'm going to give you an example. So when I was 3 years old, my parents sent me to my grandma, and my grandma lived in a very warm climate. It was just a lot of sunshine and a lot of really great place to live. So my mom and dad were working a lot. So when they were just not able to spend a lot of time with me, so my parents decided to send me to my grandma. And I was 3 years old, so I was very attached to my parents, obviously. And when I got there, and my grandma, on the way there, like, we flew on the plane, and on the way there, my grandma was telling me that, okay, my mom is going to meet us there when we get there. And when we got there, it turns out that my mom wasn't there. So I remember me being on the phone with my mom, just like begging her to take me back, like to come get me. And my mom was telling me that, well, no, I can't, you're just going to be there for a couple of weeks or months. So I think it was a couple of months, just be with your grandma. But for me, it was very, very traumatic because, as a child, we don't really understand the reasoning, right? As an adult, we can rationalize everything and say, well, my parents are very busy and they don't have time to spend with me. They don't want to leave me alone. But as a child, you don't understand that. As a child, what you hear is that, okay, my mom doesn't love me, or my dad doesn't love me, and that's why they sent me away, because I did something wrong, right? So in my adult life, I had to really work through that trigger of abandonment, okay? And a lot of women actually have that, and a lot of times this comes up in the private coaching. So there could be absolutely anything. And keep in mind that when we are kids, our threshold for trauma is very, very low, meaning that things that would not bother you as an adult, but as a child, they do bother you, okay? And that literally almost like gets stuck in the body, and you try to heal it by bringing certain circumstances into your life in order for that to be healed. So the way that it plays out, like, let's say, this comes up a lot in with my clients. So for example, if a woman had some trust issues with her parents, let's say, some trust issues, and then she will end up attracting men who would bring those trust issues up. So there will be some infidelity, or there will be lack of loyalty on their part, so that this comes up again for their inner child to heal herself. And a lot of times what I see now happening in the industry is that we are, a lot of coaches are becoming very rah-rah, very, well, let's not even look at the past, let's look at the future, let's look at your future self, let's look at your quantum self. And it's, I actually had that happen with a coach where I wanted to talk about my childhood, because I felt like certain things in my childhood were contributing to things that I was attracting in my present life. And that coach told me that, well, let's not even go there. Let's not go to your childhood. Let's just look forward. Let's look to your quantum self, right? And I think that we have to look at our child self, and we have to work through these issues. Otherwise, it will just not be something that you can attract healthy relationships unless you work through that. Same thing with abandonment issues, for example. So if you felt like you were abandoned in your childhood, and the example that I gave you, it wasn't like my mom left me, right? It's not like she put me up for adoption, absolutely not. But even such a small thing like sending your child to grandma for the summer could be really traumatic to the child, especially in such early age. And so I invite you to look at your life and just really see what issues you may be attracting into your life, like coming back to abandonment. So if this is your trauma as an inner child, then you would be attracting situations in your life where you would feel abandoned. So you would attract people into your life, and that could be romantic relationships, it could be friendships, it could be anything, right? It could be career, but you would be literally attracting situations and circumstances where you would feel abandoned. And whether it would be actually being abandoned or feeling like you're abandoned, which is pretty much similar, but so that's what it means. And when we are talking about our inner child, a lot of times, again, in the industry, there is this idea that, okay, we have to work through this, we have to shut it down. And then there's almost this judgment towards your inner child that, well, I've already worked on this, I already journaled on this, why is this coming up again? I see this a lot in women where there's like, well, how long can I deal with this? Like, how long this issue is going to come up for me if I've already journaled on it and I spoke to, a therapist or a coach about it and it's still coming up? Well, you take a shower every day, right? You don't go and say, well, I took the shower yesterday and the day before, why do I have to take a shower today? So same thing here. If it keeps coming up, then something else needs to be released. And again, if we are judging our inner child for coming up again, it feels unseen. It feels exactly like it felt in the childhood when, let's say a child was saying something to the parents like, hey, I want this or that. And the parent was like, okay, be quiet. Like, I'm working, or I don't have time right now, right? So the child doesn't feel seen. So as an adult, when something like that comes up for a child and you're feeling like that trigger coming up for you, and you say, well, this again, like, oh my God, I can't believe it's coming up again, I already worked through that. So again, then you're doing the same thing to your inner child that was done in the past, because you're not seeing it. And in my experience, once that inner child feels fully seen and fully present with you, once you actually sit there with those emotions and you feel those emotions, and once it feels seen, and however many times it's going to take you to do that, because we don't know how much trauma you actually storing in your body, but when that child feels seen and heard, that's when it's going to go away. So I think it's very important to actually not judge yourself for how long it will take you to actually work through that. And work is not the right word, because we're not working through that. We are just having our child seen. We are fully accepting whatever emotions she's going through or he's going through, if you're a man, but we have to give ourselves and our inner child that opportunity to be seen and not being judged, and not saying that, well, all that was in the past, it was 20 years ago, 10 years ago, let's move to the future. We have our quantum self that doesn't have any of those issues. Well, our quantum self still will have those issues if you haven't worked through those, because they're going to be coming up. And we definitely don't want to be moving forward in life when we keep having these issues come up. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. If this topic resonates with you, please leave me a comment, and I can talk a little bit more about that. All right, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.